In general, we Georgians, along with all of mankind, appreciate the meaning of education, that education is the shortest route to freedom. We can stop here as well, but education gives one a profession, and a profession is the path to well-being. So we can abbreviate this and say that education is the shortest route to freedom. Accordingly, I do not think we are unusual in this regard. I was still working toward my academic degree in Moscow when education in Georgia and its quality first drew my attention. While working on my economics thesis, I was tutoring entrants in physics and mathematics to make a living. In fact, that, together with my stipend, was my only source of income at the time, and I had no one to support me. At that time, I discovered the discrepancy between the actual level of knowledge and what the school diplomas read. I was sincerely concerned. I remember returning to Tbilisi and telling my friends about this with some concern, and I prepared the article as well. One of my friends wrote often, and I asked him for help to accompany me. There was the Young Communist newspaper then, and that is where I wanted to publish that we, Georgians, need to sound the alarms and that the level of education in schools needs to be raised. At some point in time, there was this attitude. You may recall that a flawed system was in place during the Soviet Union. A diploma was the shortest route, not education, form rather than substance. This was a difficult time. My friends know this. I sincerely decided to raise the alarm, saying that if this were to continue like this, at some point, we Georgians would be in trouble when the situation would change and the time would come for genuine knowledge to be valued more than a diploma. I remember writing an article and submitting it to the Young Communist newspaper. They would not publish the article, and I left disappointed. But that is when it started, and this is a natural process, of course. Correspondingly, my spouse and I were probably not unusual when we first started to discuss this. We had obtained the means to help the country. This was, I think, 1992?
Yes, it was in 1992 that we decided to make our contribution. This was connected with the fact that our financial resources had grown, and correspondingly we could afford to send Georgian students abroad. But after realizing that it was not as effective for our country as we had expected, we changed our course of action to making a difference within our educational system. Namely, by funding various schools of higher education, upgrading infrastructure, technical equipment, switching to existing systems of general and higher education.
Good that you recalled this chronology. It never crossed our minds to build a new university, because there were universities out there. As you know, schools were in dire straits at the time, and the ambition to create a new one, for us to start building a university, had not occurred to us. We focused on helping the existing ones.
The idea crystallized gradually. Today, as we're entering a different era, and high technology actually penetrates our everyday lives, with artificial intelligence integrating into our lives, the issue of a university of high technology becomes very relevant and important today. That will enable parents and students to assess the future and consider professions of the future. At the same time, it will be a new format of teaching, bringing together a whole family of the system of education. Students living on campus will develop closer bonds and learning will become easier and more fun. It will be a significantly new form of teaching in Georgia. Of course, this form of teaching is commonplace abroad, but it will be a novelty in Georgia.
You mean as a town?
Yes, a student town.
A university town that will have an entertainment as well as a scientific center in place. This will simplify learning and possibly deepen the students' attitude, and we may obtain better results. For me, it is tragic that I sent my eldest daughter to study in the United States. In short, I say to this day that I have never made a mistake of this magnitude in my life, that I lost my daughter. And now for years we have been telling our youngest son Tsotne, who is 14, to stay and study in Georgia, to find a suitable profession. That is what we have been trying to do.
I reiterate that this is not a political project. It is the sincere desire of our family to establish a high-tech university, actually enabling young people to receive this type of education. And correspondingly, it will not be a private university. As many other projects financed by our family, it will be donated to the state.
It will be a state university. I met with the university rector Khubua on my initiative. At the time, we discussed renovation, which we began as well. During the conversation, I voiced my long-standing dream to build a university town. It was 2007, if I am not mistaken. By the way, I have created a project for Batumi as well, for which I paid more than $1 million. I commissioned foreigners to do this. The foreigners assured us that this is no longer promising and that a university of this size cannot be created, that it has to work using its own energy, that having more than 3 floors is no good, and so on. Then, against this backdrop, the political situation became complicated, the war broke out, and I severed ties with them after those elections. Then this idea concerning Kutaisi was conceived, the most logical and best idea, I believe. You are aware that historically Kutaisi has always been a traditional center of education, and I mean traditional in an all-Georgian sense. And I think that Kutaisi was the best choice. It is true that a lot of time was spent, but I think that as an idea it developed in the right way. Against this backdrop, it is important for both Western and Eastern Georgia. Today, most schools of higher education are concentrated in Tbilisi. This will even ensure the division and distribution of students across Western and Eastern Georgia.
And it's attractive in terms of location, because you can get to the Black Sea in 1.5 hours.
Even in 1 hour.
Yes, and that must be very attractive for young people. A great place to vacation, lots of sunshine.
It will revitalize not only Kutaisi but also all of Western Georgia.
And an important destination in terms of geography and ecology.
And in terms of travel as well, students will no longer flock to Tbilisi. For the most part, there will be students from Western Georgia, of course, but some will probably travel from Eastern Georgia too. So naturally, students will be distributed evenly, which will make Western Georgia even more appealing. This university will be only part of a larger system to be put in place by our state. You may know that starting in 2021, significant resources will be spent on education, 25% of the budget. This is very serious. Major infrastructural projects will be completed and we will switch to investing heavily in education. It is very important that in 8 years, we will be able to see a fundamentally different result. If we spend such significant funds and resources, we can have excellent results, and everyone will see that we are an accomplished country, an educated and successful state with a great history and culture, of which I boast when I meet with foreigners. We are going through hard times now. When I meet foreigners for the second, third time, they start talking about history, knowing that I'm proud of our continuous culture, which spans numerous centuries. Our brilliant ancestors handed down to us unique territories and lands, and a genetic legacy. We must rise to this great challenge and do so honorably. We must remember our great culture and great history. I'm very optimistic about outcomes and a decent present reality. It is my dream to have it in the present, because we are not worse than anybody else, and this way we can honor our history. Besides the usual characteristics of a university town, Kutaisi in our case will have added value in that we will additionally build a scientific center with hadron therapy, an accelerator, which is regarded as a mega project. Besides, medical treatment, scientists of various fields, mathematicians, physicists, biologists, and others will be educated there. This type of radiation therapy is the least harmful way to treat oncological diseases. The damaged areas where malignant cells multiply can be treated more effectively and less harm is done to the human body in general. Thus, hadron therapy will be a big relief for patients. I personally, as well as Cartu Fund, will continue to fund this, and Diromi will also have a scientific center for Tbilisi, but Kutaisi and the university town will have their own scientific center where they will be able to defend their dissertations. It will be an international university, and we hope that it will attract many foreign students to Kutaisi, which is very important for the country, as you can imagine. We have students from developing countries coming here to study in our universities, but the high quality of our university, which we will ensure by all means, will attract students from more developed countries, from Europe. It will not be yet another university, but a quintessentially European university, with its planning and design provided by the University of Munich, with its former rector to serve as our university's honorary rector, which is also noteworthy. Equally impressive will be the cooperation with the University of Munich on this project, which is far more than merely formal. Every teaching standard of this university will be met, and we will have a German form of education in Georgia. In the same vein, if German education is accompanied by German assiduousness and diligence, that will give Georgia a new momentum. We must accelerate the pace of development in order to take our historical place, and I do not mean a physical territory literally, but rather our place as a full-fledged member of developed European countries. This cannot be achieved without education, and only education will enable us to succeed.